What's going on? This Theo Grummager for Player Profiler, and we're talking about Week 1 waiver wire additions. That's right. We're giving you players you can scoop up on the waiver wire before the NFL season even starts. This is for some of you in deeper leagues have a preseason waiver wire run that's going to be Tuesday or Wednesday. Then you've also got some players with open free agents. You might want to grab one of these players as a lottery ticket type stash. You want to maybe beat the waiver wire this week with a player that might have increased usage or an increased long-term opportunity in the right offense. I'm always going to be looking for players that are available in 25% of Yahoo leagues or less. I'm not going to give you too many players that are like 50% available. I'll include some of those in my article and on the Waiver Wire podcast. But in these videos, I'm really looking for deeper sleepers that can help you out. Let's get started right away. And one player who's available, readily available in a lot of the leagues where I drafted early on, is Jordan Mason. And I think Jordan Mason has to be treated as one of the better handcuffs in football right now. CMC is an absolute weapon of mass destruction in fantasy football, a player who is about as good as it gets, and a player who was continually selected in the top 3 picks of PPR leagues, if not the 101 this entire offseason. But there is a lot of value in rostering the back behind him. The San Francisco offense is a potent one. This is an offense that's going to score points. This is an offense that, even if CMC were to miss, would still get fantasy production out of the running back position. And Jordan Mason has absolutely earned this job. This has been a guy who's been around the organization now. This was a player that had to compete with Elijah Mitchell. San Francisco drafted Isaac Guerendo. They signed Cody Schrader. There was players in the mix that could have challenged Mason, but Mason has just been nasty. And everything about Jordan Mason screams being involved in this offense. Now, when Christian McCaffrey is healthy, I don't expect Mason's role to be that large. Like, he's not a guy that you'd want to put in your lineup. But any week that Christian McCaffrey would miss, Jordan Mason would be a top 15 play at the running back position. Prioritize him if he is available in your league and pick him up right now. Don't even finish this video. Go pick up some Jordan Mason. And let's talk about a couple of other running backs that should absolutely be rostered in every single league. And a lot of you are going to say, hey, not in my league, bro. These guys are not available in my league. My league is deep. My league is competitive. And my league is sharp. But for some people that are in maybe 15 roster spot leagues and not 20, some of these guys might be out on the wire. Jalen Wright is available in 79% of Yahoo leagues. Probably my favorite lottery ticket player who's available in this sort of a range in Yahoo. So Jalen Wright has 2 contingent upsides. If Raheem Mostert goes down, he's in your lineup. If Devon Achane goes down, he's in your lineup. Jalen Wright is a beast. He is in one of the best offenses in the league. You don't need me to explain to you why to pick him up if he's available. Bucky Irving is available in 82% of Yahoo leagues. Really like Bucky Irving. I think he could be a handcuff plus behind Rachaad White, one of the better pass-catching backs in this rookie class, and fits very well into the Tampa Bay scheme. I think they're going to work in Bucky Irving on a weekly basis, and if Rachaad White were to miss time, he would go nuts. Ray Davis, much like Jordan Mason, Ray Davis is a James Cook injury away from just being a RB1, really. Ray Davis also can be a handcuff plus. It's going to be hard for Buffalo not to mix him in. We think about those weeks last year where Lat Murray was seeing touches in this offense under Joe Brady. They are going to feature the running backs in this offense, and Ray Davis is really good. Back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons in the SEC, had 7 receiving touchdowns last year. Ray Davis is going to put some pressure on James Cook. If James Cook has some untimely fumbles or maybe drops a big pass in the end zone, Ray Davis could see an uptick in usage, should be rostered everywhere. And a player who's available in 86% of Yahoo leagues, a guy who, if you follow my Dynasty content, you know that I love this prospect, Marshawn Lloyd. Marshawn Lloyd, the market is not caught up to the fact that Marshawn Lloyd was practicing yesterday. Green Bay's playing in Brazil. Marshawn Lloyd may not play this week, but he's a guy that you want on your roster. Matt LaFleur has continually used 2 backs. For all the Josh Jacobs backers out there, even this year, they're going to utilize 2 backs. Josh Jacobs could still smash, but there's going to be 2 running backs who get touches on a weekly basis in this offense. That's just the way it goes in Green Bay. It happened to Aaron Jones. It's going to happen to Josh Jacobs. And the biggest beneficiary is going to be Marshawn Lloyd. Remember, A.J. Dillon is out for the year. Let's stay at the running back position. And those few players I talked about are probably not available to you if you're in an NFFC or FFPC type league. But one player who is going to be available to you pretty much everywhere if you drafted, anytime before like the end of August, this player is going to be sitting there on those waiver wires and the free agents. And that's Samaje Perine. Samaje Perine landed in an ideal spot in Kansas City. We remember the success of Jerick McKinnon. Samaje Perine is now going to be in that role. Not quite the athlete that Jerick McKinnon is, but Samaje Perine has earned targets from multiple NFL offensive coordinators. He does one thing very well. He catches the football. Back-to-back seasons with 50-plus receptions, one in Cincinnati, one in Denver. If Isaiah Pacheco were to miss time, Samaje Perine would absolutely be in our lineups. And you also want to have Kansas City Chiefs with pathways to fantasy viability. This is an offense that is going to score a ton. Last year, Kansas City, a little bit disappointing in terms of fantasy football. Patrick Mahomes finished as QB 10 overall in fantasy points per game at the quarterback position. This is the Patrick Mahomes revenge tour. Kansas City is going to be one of the best offenses in football, pedal to the metal, big improvements at the wide receiver spot, and Samaje Perine is sitting there with contingent upside and the ability to catch passes on a weekly basis. I am absolutely prioritizing him. Another player who should absolutely be rostered in any competitive format is Jalen McMillan. We're talking about a wide receiver that's going to be available in a ton of these early drafts. McMillan has been the buzz guy at Tampa Bay training camp and at OTAs. He was a 3rd-round draft pick out of the University of Washington. In 2022, McMillan led Washington in receptions. He had more catches than Rome Odunze. He had more catches than Jalen Polk. Last year, Jalen McMillan dealt with some injuries, but this is a player that is really, really talented. Baker Mayfield loves him, and he should slot in right as the wide receiver 3 in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was in 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers on the field at one of the top 5 levels of any team in football last year. So expect Tampa Bay to again be in 3 wide receiver sets a lot. McMillan has a chance to help you out with some early spike weeks. It's going to be difficult for him to be a guy you could trust with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans starting. But with Evans and Godwin, you're talking about 2 players who are probably the oldest combination of starting wide receivers in the NFL right now. If one of them were to miss time, McMillan absolutely would be in your lineup. He's a beast. 3rd-round pick. And if you're a dynasty manager, go scoop up some Jalen McMillan if he's available. And back to the running back position, one player that I was actually shocked by how readily available he is on Yahoo is Braylon Allen. This is a player that's been getting drafted in like the 12th round of FFPC and NFFC drafts late in the summer, but he's actually available in 89% of Yahoo leagues. No-brainer addition. He has handcuff plus value behind Breece Hall. They're going to keep Breece Hall fresh this year. Breece Hall can finish running back 1 overall. Don't get it twisted. But Braylon Allen is going to be absolutely a really fun change of pace back with his size, his explosiveness, and his ability around the goal line. This is a player that could be useful. So make sure you roster yourself some Braylon Allen. Let's pivot over to the quarterback position. One player who's going to be available that really needs to be prioritized, especially for you Superflex managers. If you were drafting earlier in the summer in Superflex, this player went under the radar. I know he's actually available in some of my Superflex leagues, redraft leagues, and also some Superflex Dynasty leagues that I'm going to be looking to add some Sam Darnold. And Sam Darnold, this is a player that I actually traded for on a Dynasty league. I didn't give up a ton, but I think that there is a chance that we see a career year from Sam Darnold. That's not saying a whole lot. This has been a player who was a major disappointment in his career, had sort of his work cut out for him in New York, had some moments in Carolina, but Sam Darnold sort of becomes a must-add in Superflex leagues. We saw Nick Mullins pass for a ton of yards in this Minnesota offense. We saw Josh Dobbs produce multiple QB1 weeks in this Minnesota offense. They know what they're doing as a coaching staff. And Sam Darnold gets to throw passes to arguably the best fantasy wide receiver of all time in Justin Jefferson. So Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones out of the backfield, a very solid offensive line, and also TJ Hawkinson coming back from injury sooner than later. I expect to see Hawkinson maybe in the second month of the year. So Darnold has an opportunity for mid QB2 numbers. And a lot of you will say, Theo, there is absolutely no chance that we see Darnold putting up that sort of numbers. He's been terrible. But for the back-to-back seasons, we've seen a quarterback that's sort of left for dead, a veteran quarterback left for dead, punch way above his ADP. Last year, Baker Mayfield finished as a QB1. The year before, Geno Smith finished as a QB1. Both of those players were going in ADP right around the same spot Sam Darnold was, left for dead. So look for Sam Darnold to bounce back this season. Another quarterback you really want to prioritize, especially if you have time to let this player kind of sit on your bench, Bo Nix. Bo Nix is worth scooping up if he went overlooked in your league. He could exceed expectations this season. I think with Bo Nix, you all know about the accuracy. He had record-setting accuracy this past year for Oregon, but he also has rushing upside. And I think that this offense is going to be very Bo Nix friendly. Low ADOT passes, Cortland Sutton on the outside, and Bo Nix on some design runs, which is going to prop up his fantasy floor. Definitely an interesting one. Even more speculative, Drake May. If Drake May is available in one of your leagues and you want an upside QB stash, as soon as he takes over, he's going to put up fantasy numbers because he runs the football well, and he is readily available in a lot of leagues. Let's talk about some deeper league options. A couple guys where if you are in a 20-man roster league, these players are all going to be interesting to you. For the most part, none of these guys are ones you really need to prioritize if you're in a very shallow format, but these are all players to kind of keep an eye on and see if they have increased usage from what we're projecting. Malik Washington, wide receiver, Miami Dolphins, interesting one. If Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill were to miss time, Washington would be a top waiver wire addition. 6th-round draft pick, but he slid because of injury concerns. This was a mega producer at UVA. Incredible numbers at UVA this past year. Started his career out at Northwestern, but Miami just doesn't have any other wide receivers. So Malik Washington might actually see extra work in week 1. Running back, Justice Hill. Justice Hill, primary handcuff in Baltimore. Keaton Mitchell still injured. Justice Hill has been there a long time. The coaching staff trusts him. If Derrick Henry were to miss time, Justice Hill would step right in. This is not a player who would dominate your league by any means. If Justice Hill became the running back in Baltimore, you would expect to see a lot more Lamar Jackson manufactured rushing attempts, and you would see a lot more Zay Flowers around the line of scrimmage. But Justice Hill, based on the quality of the offense, would have to be treated as a low-end RB2 if Henry were to miss time. Speaking of running backs, I talked about Marshawn Lloyd, but Marshawn Lloyd might miss the first week or two of the season. It is no given that he will play in Brazil, and then with that difficult travel coming back from Brazil, there's a chance he misses week 2 as well. Emmanuel Wilson is a player that the Green Bay organization likes a lot. They talked about him in the offseason. He could have an early opportunity. Emmanuel Wilson is definitely one where you're going to get him for free, especially in open waivers leagues, a free agent like acquisition league. Just grab him, stash him for the game, and if he doesn't do anything, you can let him go. But if not, he might be a guy you want to keep a hold of. Again, that's an offense that always mixes in a second back. So I think we will see some Emmanuel Wilson against Philadelphia. Going to the tight end position, Juwan Johnson actually slid through the cracks, even in some tight end premium formats, because he was injured earlier in the offseason. He's healthy. He's back. Now, Taysom Hill is going to play a ton, but Taysom Hill is a guy that is going to line up essentially as like a kind of a tailback, a wildcat quarterback. He's going to line up all over. You'll see some Taysom Hill snaps at tight end, but Juwan Johnson will lead that room in terms of targets. Rashid Shaheed's also been dealing with a couple of nagging injuries. Juwan Johnson, definitely an interesting one. For tight end premium managers, Colby Parkinson is going to be on the field an absolute ton for the LA Rams. I think he could be a full snap player. They signed him for a ton of money from Seattle. Parkinson, they rested him in the preseason along with the starters. So like Colby Parkinson is super interesting. Staying at the tight end position, Zach Ertz. The situation for Zach Ertz is quite similar to last year. He is attached to a younger tight end with a little bit of juice. Last year, he was attached to Trey McBride, but Zach Ertz still managed to see 3 games in the first month of the season with 8 targets or more. Ben Sinnott will eventually take over this room, but if you need tight end points in the first month of the season, especially in tight end premium, Zach Ertz is going to be a high floor player. The wide receiver room in Washington is very unsettled. Diami Brown, Noah Brown, Olamide Zacchaeus. There's not somebody in that room besides Terry McLaurin that's going to like grab every target. And obviously Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler will see their touches, but Jaden Daniels needs a secondary target. Veteran deference plays in with rookie quarterbacks often. We saw what happened with Zach Ertz last season. He could get off to another high volume start to the year. Go back to the running back position. Pierre Strong. Pierre Strong is the handcuff to roster behind Jerome Ford. Nick Chubb is going to miss. Does anybody actually know when Nick Chubb's going to be back? If so, comment in this video. Nick Chubb will miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season. That seems like wishful thinking that he would be back in week 5. Pierre Strong playing behind Jerome Ford. Pick him up, especially in deep formats. Staying at the running back position, Trey Sermon, running back, Indianapolis Colts. He's the handcuff behind Jonathan Taylor. Now, there's rumors they're bringing in Leonard Fournette. I mean, we saw what Lenny did in Buffalo. It was absolutely nothing last year. Trey Sermon, not a guy we're super excited about, but the backup role behind Jonathan Taylor, really, really beneficial. Last year, that's how we got Zach Moss. Trey Sermon is with the organization again for another year. This was one of the biggest busts in quite some time for you dynasty managers out there, but he's in Indianapolis. We saw Zach Moss have his games last year. This is a running back friendly scheme. And let's stay and keep this going. Let's go back to the wide receiver position, another player to stash. And I want you to prioritize this player. If you have Puka Nacua or you have Cooper Kupp, consider rostering Jordan Whittington. Jordan Whittington, 6th-round pick out of Texas, was unbelievably productive in the preseason. A lot of the people in this chat will say, yeah, but he was actually out there on the field with the guys that are trying to make the team. I think that's also so the LA could see what they had in him and try to see if he could step into a featured role. No organization does a better job of identifying day 3 NFL draft picks who hit in fantasy better than the LA Rams. How do I know this? Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, both day 3 picks, both smashed last year. If Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp missed time, Jordan Whittington would be a guy that a lot of people would try to get off the waiver wire. Demarcus Robinson, we know what he is. Like, Demarcus Robinson, very solid NFL player, but not a guy that we would really want to trust in fantasy. Puka Nacua, Jordan Whittington, it's a Freudian slip. I just called him Puka Nacua. He's not Puka Nacua, but if Puka Nacua missed time or Cooper Kupp missed time, Jordan Whittington would be an interesting player. Consider him like a handcuff option. We've seen Cooper Kupp miss time for 2 straight years, and Puka Nacua dealing with some nagging injuries right now. Back to the tight end position, deep leaguers. Keep an eye on Theo Johnson. Not only does he have the best first name in the entire NFL, but he is a mega athlete with only Daniel Bellinger to compete with. We'll know really quickly. Let's see how many snaps Theo Johnson gets against Minnesota in week 1. This is a guy where, especially tight end premium, consider picking him up. Greg Dulcich, tight end, Denver Broncos. Consider picking him up as well. He's available in a ton of Yahoo leagues right now. Denver is a situation where we know Cortland Sutton's going to get a lot of targets, but he's sort of a capped upside target guy. He's never been a guy who's ever commanded like 150 target season. It's just not in his range of outcomes. A good season target-wise for Cortland Sutton, like a really big win, would be like 130 targets. That would be a huge win for where you're drafting him. So Greg Dulcich is going to compete for targets with a wide receiver room that we're going to talk about a little later, but nothing's going to get you too hyped. So keep an eye on Greg Dulcich. He has an opportunity to be kind of high in the pecking order in Denver, along with their running backs in terms of targets. Now let's actually talk about those Denver Broncos wide receivers, because I want to take a look and see about the targets and snap shares of Devon Vele and Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds was a guy that we talked about on my waiver wire videos last year, my waiver wire columns last year, early in the year had some very impactful games for the Detroit Lions. Now signs as a free agent in Denver. And Devon Vele is interesting because I'm not talking about Marvin Mims. I'm not talking about Troy Franklin. I'm talking about an older rookie who is going to play the slot in Devon Vele. University of Utah product. Vele is one that they seem to really like, and there's been some buzz about him. This is one where there's a huge disconnect in the dynasty fantasy football community with what might actually happen on the NFL field. Troy Franklin, 4th-round pick out of Oregon. Marvin Mims was obviously a 2nd-round pick out of Oklahoma the year before. But both of those players seem like they're not going to be played inside. They're going to be more outside wide receivers. Devon Vele might be a guy who sees extra targets in week 1. Stranger things have happened. He's very old. He's a different kind of rookie, but he's like a 6'4" slot wide receiver. Very interesting profile. And the last player to talk about, Jordan Mims. This is a backup, the handcuff in New Orleans right now to Alvin Kamara. Kendre Miller is on the IR for a month of the season. Jordan Mims is one to keep an eye on. 25-year-old, impressed in training camp. And this is like a kind of seemingly kind of out of nowhere player, but the organization does seem to like him. Let's keep an eye on him. If I had Alvin Kamara on one of my redraft teams, I would pick up Jordan Mims before the game just because. And the last player to talk about, Cody Steele of the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to see because Samaje Perine was signed, but now Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to miss at least the first month of the season. Cody Steele might get some usage around the goal line, usage in short yardage situations. There are people who really, really believe in his usage. Then there's some people who think that nothing's going to really happen with it. We'll see what happens. I'm Theo Greminger. I'm going to be hosting a Waiver Wire podcast here at Player Profiler in season. I write the Waiver Wire article every week. You can get it right at Player Profiler. It's for free. And I go very deep. I even list more names than I talked about on this video. So a lot of help for even you deeper league fantasy managers. Stick with us here at Player Profiler. We're going to provide you all the tools you need and everything you need in terms of content to win your leagues this season. It's been a great offseason for people following. And let's continue. Let's crush it this year.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.